So let's get into our conversation. It's about agroforestry. What's agroforestry and what exactly do we seek to do? Agroforestry refers to a set of land use practices that deliberately integrate woody perennials such as trees, shrubs, palms, herbs, fruit trees, bamboos, among others, with agricultural crops and or livestock. Okay? So, uko na shamba yako, unalima mahindi, mboga, viazi, whatever, na pia uko na miti. Miti ya matunda, miti ya kuuza, uko na bamboo, whatever. Now, the thing is you can harvest the maize and eat, and warus and sell and eat. What do you do with the trees? Okay? You don't need anybody's permission to harvest your warus. Do you need anybody's permission to cut a tree? Can you imagine that you do? We want to ask those questions to our Forestry Secretary, George Tarus, who joins us this morning. Good morning, George.
Good morning, Latif, and it's a pleasure to be part of this panel this morning.
Asante sana for joining us. George is actually a forestry guy, right? Through and through. Amesomea mambo ya forest, amefanya kazi ya mambo ya forest. So him and trees,
Same was up.
George, as we get into the conversation, Felaris is going to give you the day's quote. Let's see what you think about it.
Karibu sana, George. Today's quote is courtesy of a man that was the winner of the 1927 Nobel Prize in Literature. Name is Henry Bergson. The quote reads, "The consequence of every act is included in the act itself." The consequence of every act is included in the act itself. How does that resonate with you?
Wow. Yeah, it is an amazing quote, and I think looking at it from just the way you quoted it, it is indeed true that the consequences of the act is included in the act itself, which I think resonate to us in many ways. And basically, that is why, as forestry, we've partly been able to integrate that in our plans, because the real fact is that Kenya is a low forest cover country that has historically undergone various phases of forest development. The aspiration is for us to be able to be where we should be as espoused in our constitution. And that path, of course, has been characterized by the positives and the negatives. But of course, as we start facing greater challenges of climate change, the need to act and to act decisively is before us. And that's why if you're able to evaluate what this administration has been able to do, is really set the foundation for that paradigm shift. Looking at the National Forest Policy 2023, looking at the suite of other legislative instruments that have been put in place, we are confident that from the forestry side, we are set to go. And of course, the topic for discussion this morning is just but an example of how we want to really transform. And we feel that in us investing in agroforestry as an intervention in our lands, most likely the consequences will be positive. Yes.
Absolutely. A good place to start this conversation, even before we get to how we can look at trees as an economic engine and just a money generator. Let's start with something that is very fresh, which is matters development, conservation, and the rule of law, and what is happening in Imenti. This is not the first time an airstrip is being constructed within a forest. 1.5 kilometers have already been cleared for this. We are going to run a bite from yesterday and then just get your quick.
Actually, the bite is him. There's not really
Good. You get to listen to yourself.
It was him speaking to a journalist last night when he was asked the question about the airstrip and then about the other developments that are proposed in the forest. First the airstrip and then the others. Listen.
We had a fire incident that burnt over 1,000, it was almost 1,200 acres of land within that region. So part of the bigger strategy is to see that lower Imenti area all the way to the northern frontier benefit from that investment so that Kenya Forest Service can be able to land planes when needed to respond to fire incidences. All the national parks, all the conservancies, name them, have such facilities because they are critical infrastructure to protect those resources.
They all have airstrips.
At least a place where they are able to have those small planes or choppers landing.
We have no opposition for development. Lakini, it has to be done wisely. It has to be done without undermining the environment. If Meru need an airstrip, Meru may need an airstrip, but we have a problem with the siting, with the location of the airstrip. So I'm coming here to engage and to discuss how an alternative site can be formed that will not impact our forest and still provide the same service to the people of Meru.
No, that is further from the truth, at least that I'm not aware. And if it is in the proposal, then of course it will go through the right procedures of having such facilities to exist in our forests.
What do you mean? Oh, wait, we are not building a state lodge in Imenti?
I am not aware.
Mimi nawauliza nyinyi watu wa Meru, mnasema tujenge state lodge hapa? Mimi nasikia kuna wengine wanapinga. Tujenge hapa? Si ndio? Nani anasema ya kwamba rais hawezi kulala Nyeri, hawezi kulala Meru? Si ndio? Si kama tumejenga state lodge mahali pengine, si tujenge ya hapa? Hiyo watu wawache upuzi bwana.
Eti tukitaka state lodge tukimbie Sagana, iko karibu sana. Hatutakimbia Sagana, tutajenga yetu hapa. Vile ulikuwa umeniahidi unataka kuijenga, ndio Madaraka Day ya 2027 ulale hapo, uamkie hapo, uwe na wazee wa Jorincheke, Klaje.
That's Isaac Mutuma, the governor of Meru, and before that the president and the executive director of Rhino Arc during a public participation forum on this issue of setting up things around the forest. So, George, earlier we see you also and hear you when you were asked by our reporter about the two developments in the forest. So let's start with the airstrip. Is it true or not that there are plans to establish an airstrip within Meru Forest?
Yeah, it is true. There are plans to establish an airstrip within Meru Forest, and like I said earlier, based on the latest scientific information we have in our custody, it is expected that the fire incidences in Kenya are about to increase to a level that if we are not strategic in terms of its management, we will lose the very resource that we are all yearning to protect for posterity. I say this because last year alone, or the other year, we experienced a unique phenomenon in that lower eastern part of Kenya, where close to 1,000 acres were lost through wildfire. And part of the wider government response is now enhancing our infrastructure to be able to respond to such calamities. If you were to visit our forest now, you would realize that we've been able to install infrastructure that are able to detect and communicate effectively incidences of fire outbreak. There are masts mounted with cameras now that are able to really pick incidences of fires. Part of what is required, therefore, is the support in the event that fire happens. What is immediately required? You need a facility to be able to mobilize action, and part of that now, therefore, is the proposed airstrip in Lower Imenti, basically to look at that part of the country.
Okay.
And interestingly, is that of course that is a transitional zone where we are now moving into the more arid and the more dry parts of Kenya. So it is a strategic investment from purely a forestry angle.
Well, as a forester,
Yeah.
does it justify the acreage that's going to lose tree cover to establish this particular, if you look at everything else that you're saying?
Of course, before any other infrastructure of such magnitude is undertaken, there must be information to support that. And part of the requirement is environmental impact studies that are undertaken and, of course, independently verified by NEMA. And if they meet the threshold that the impact of that investment is not detrimental, then they would, of course, be able to clear it. So I'm aware that that environmental impact assessment was undertaken. Of course, now NEMA, in its own wisdom, should be able to guide what needs to happen. But overall, having said that, I think as much as it's a matter of national interest, I think also we try to put a little bit of some activism into it, because Christian is my great friend. I've interacted with him and, of course, worked with him in doing quite a number of forestry activities. And if we are to be very honest to ourselves, you realize even the conservancies privately run around that area at least have such facilities. Our national parks, if we were to do a scout check, you realize that such infrastructure are part and parcel of a better managed natural assets.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know the acreage is probably massive when it comes to forest cover around Meru, but you've mentioned that, yes, there are privately owned conservancies around that do have airstrips, which is the case all around the country. Which ones would be the closest, and why not just work on a collaboration with, these privately run spaces and share their resources like airstrips, as opposed to starting afresh somewhere in Imenti Forest?
Thank you, and I think it's a pertinent question. It is, of course, an issue we put into consideration, because such infrastructure also come with costs, and you would realize that to land a plane, for instance, in whether private or publicly run airstrip, you need to pay. So sometimes instead of going that route while you have the asset yourself, why not invest for posterity and save those costs that you need to be paying in terms of landing cost and other related fees that comes with it. Yeah.
Okay. We'll talk about maybe the economics of one versus the other. But the other question was, this airstrip, does it fall under the law allowing wayments? Is that the word? Easements. Sorry. Wayments. Easements, yes, and way leaves. I think that's the word I was looking for. Within forests? Or is this a separate infrastructure project that requires some different sort of approval?
Basically, it's an investment by Kenya Forest Service as an institution to be able to enhance its capacity to respond to fire. The one you mentioned of is partly what allows existence of infrastructure for purposes of various other uses, majorly public utilization, sometimes private interests. So, and it is provided there in law, in the details of what you need to do, the procedure of accessing it. So basically, this one is part of the wider forest management. So it may not necessarily be strictly implemented based on the provisions of that section of law. But however, it is required to meet the wider environmental threshold, because the MCA, if you are to read that it clearly, articulates that there are certain projects that you must be able to subject it to an environmental impact assessment, whether in private or public. And the cases and examples are many. You cannot build a petrol station, even if it's private, without subjecting it to environmental impact assessment. You cannot do major road infrastructure. You cannot do major housing infrastructure minus running it through by an environmental threshold. So it's the case now for what KFS is undertaking in law Imenti for purposes of that infrastructure.
Okay, so it's above the threshold for calling it an easement?
Yes,
for a way.
yes. Because it's an internal infrastructure. The same case, KFS, for instance, would be putting up rangers' houses or offices for purposes of their own internal use.
And in this case, because just listening to your clip, you're saying you have no information on the state lodge and the amenities to be built around it. That's the golf course.
Yes, like I rightly said, of course, I know it's a discussion that is ongoing. Public participation commenced. Unfortunately or fortunately, Now it's a subject to be arbitrated by the courts. We are expecting that the court should be able to give us a way forward, hopefully by the end of this month. And thereof, of course, we should be able to know now what are the next steps. But the way the head of state has said, of course, it's an infrastructure that is also important for the people of Meru. And so I would want to leave it at that point.
So you are aware.
So you are aware.
Yeah, you are aware.
By the time when that conversation was happening, I wasn't aware. So
But as we're having this conversation
as
right
I'm having
now,
this conversation, I'm aware
that this is to be built within the forest.
I cannot confirm whether it is within the forest or not because it's a subject of public participation. So, of course, the public should be able to inform us where that should be. And, of course, the other actors within government should be able also to be part and parcel of that.
No, Tarus.
But more importantly, of course, I am aware that it is a proposal. Yeah.
Okay. When Kenya Forest Service is conducting public participation on this matter, where we've seen people who have come out, civil society actors, residents of Meru, and others, what was the proposal that KFS was presenting? What was the KFS asking the people to comment on? Airstrip, State Lodge, golf course?
All of them.
Are you saying you were not aware of that the Kenya Forest Service was conducting a public participation exercise?
No, the question that you asked me was not about Kenya Forest Service conducting
So let's go step by step.
Yeah.
Were you aware that Kenya Forest Service was conducting this public participation?
Yes.
For what?
Number one, for the road infrastructure. Number two, for State Lodge. Yes, those are the ones that I'm aware.
And the only reason why Kenya Forest Service would be asking people to comment about a State Lodge is because it's within their jurisdiction.
Yes.
Which is forest.
Yes.
So you're aware that there's a proposal to build a State Lodge within the forest?
Yes, if that is the logic, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, as far as you are aware, what is the justification for hiving off part of a forest to build a State Lodge?
Forest resources exist, and if you are to look at it the way we want to manage it, is also, apart from the environmental benefits, is for the social economic development of any nation. And specifically, that's our vision in Kenya. And therefore, at one point in time, they would provide assets for purposes of the social economic development of this country. So those proposals, as they are part of the bigger blueprint for Kenya's development, which I believe if it's cleared by the public, then you should be able to progress. But I think you should also be able to look into that question in a more wider context. We have been very deliberate to increase our tree cover. We have targeted to do 10.6 million hectares of our degraded lands under trees. It is expected that the results would be increased forest cover. It is expected that the result is increase other benefits that comes out of that. So from a management perspective, and there are examples all over the world, there is a conversation called ecological / environmental trade-offs. That at one point it's possible to give in to a critical infrastructure in a certain portion of a forest or a natural assets, and be able to compensate that by doubling or even tripling the loss of what happened in another part of Kenya. And that is the wider context in which I would want us to approach this conversation.
Fair enough. It's 29 minutes after 7. We want to take a quick break. But even as we take this break, Tarus, you can therefore understand the concern being raised. That on the one hand, we're saying, let's increase our forest cover. Let's could double up our efforts on this. And then we're actually going into a forest to hive off some land to remove trees.
And then
we haven't done one.
Then we'll undo that damage
by
doubling or tripling somewhere else when it could have just as easily been avoided. Let's take a short break and we can respond to that.
What's up, nation? My name is Beryl from Busia County, and I'm fixing the nation by focusing on regeneration and sustainability, on simple actions like conserving water, urban gardening, and recycling. And that's how we fix it, fixers.
Thank you so much, Beryl. That's a wonderful What's Up Nation video. We love to see and hear from fixers kama wewe, see how you're doing, how you're fixing the nation, and you're pushing matter sustainability. Kazi safi sana na watu wa Busia well represented. Our number is 0769 590 762. That's 0769 590 762. You'll see it at the bottom of your screen in just a little bit. But be sure to send us your What's Up Nation video. Tell us who you are, where you are, and how you're fixing the nation. Ivo too.
Indeed. Our conversation continues with Tarus, who is the Secretary for Forestry in the country. And George, as we're going to the break, we were saying, you are a forester yourself. I mean, you and forests are one and the same thing. There's a now policy, and also the policy that you've just recently launched that's looking at agroforestry. How do we encourage farmers to embrace forestry within the ecosystem? How do we encourage that to happen? Huku hayo ya kijiri, now there's this other concern. We are saying, let's expand our forests, but there's also encroachment into our forests. There's this case of Imenti, there are cases of all the other forests. We had a story about the Ngong forest that has over time been eroded. There are cases of other forests that have been eroded. Are you seeing that from a forester's perspective as a genuine point of concern?
Thank you very much for that question, and I think I want to say that it is not true.
What's not true?
That is not true that we are losing our forests.
Okay.
In fact, if you are to look at the FAO statistics, 2025, we are the only country in the region that has its forest cover on the increase. And I said that it is good when we have this discussion from a more holistic national perspective. That yes, the investments within the national restoration strategy, the 15 billion trees, is already bearing fruits. And if you even to do a very quick search, Google Earth engine, you should be able to see that Kenya is now turning green. That being the case, of course, there are also strategic investment that needs to be undertaken. And the example you cited are part and few examples that are happening. But if you are to look at the wider context, there is every other effort to ensure that we increase our forest cover. There is every other effort to ensure that we protect the integrity of our national public forest. And why am I convinced that there are efforts? Number one, the capacity of Kenya Forest Service has drastically been improved in terms of human and infrastructural support over the last 3 years. We saw the biggest recruitment by government for Kenya Forest Service rangers to be able to patrol and, of course, be able to manage any illegalities in our forest. We are also investing heavily in resolving, of course, quite a number of other historical issues so that we have clarity in our boundaries. And that would be followed again by fencing so that once and for all, we are able to protect the existing forest from being lost. Apart from now addressing the underlying drivers, because people go to forest to get certain benefits. They are going there for purposes of wood, water, and many others. So what we are saying is we need to be able to have the same services being available at household levels. And that's why you see our clarion call for agroforestry, our clarion call for commercial forestry. And out of that, now we should be able to enable our citizens to access those services within their homesteads. And the details of how we want to do that is through the National Agroforestry Strategy 2025-2035. And in it is a deliberate decision by government to ensure that farmers are able to access high-value tree species within the homesteads. and ultimately be able to have what we call pesa mfukoni. And pesa mfukoni in this case is ensuring that we promote high value crops. Avocado, for instance, has taken root as a very serious agroforestry species in high potential areas, and the economics around it can speak for itself. Secondly, we have now been able to pick cacao or cocoa as the next other potential high value crop tree to be promoted. It was recently launched, and it is a crop that now we would again be putting a lot of investment in its adoption and scaling up. And we expect to deliver a lot of economic benefits to wananchi. Those are, of course, examples of high value trees that can be grown in one's farm in the high potential areas. The arid and semi-arid areas, because we also need to intervene for
If we go to the arid and semi-arid, for layman, just explain. So agroforestry is essentially growing trees for commercial purpose?
Not really. It's growing trees within your normal farm use.
So alongside whatever it is.
Alongside whatever you're doing, whether you are, when you're doing, you're keeping rearing animals, we encourage you to have a tree as part of rearing of those animals.
Okay.
And there are trees that are able to be beneficial to you as a farmer if you're interested in rearing animals. There are also farmers who are majorly crop producers. They want to grow maize, they want to grow other things in their farm that may not necessarily be trees. So we are telling them, yes, as much as you would continue growing your wheat, maize, potatoes, you can be able to do the same with a tree as part of the equations. So that is the matrix.
Okay.
At your household, if you also want to use your farm for purposes of an hospitality facility, just for you to see open space and feel good, we can encourage you also to do a crop as part of it. So that's why I said while we are doing what you're doing, we would be proposing these specific high value crop trees because they mean very well in terms of the economic returns.
I'm just wondering two things here.
Yes.
And you mentioned high potential areas. Maybe you could give us an indicator of what those areas are. And second, a smallholder farmer who only has about an acre, who's looking at maximum output from that farm, getting them to come on board and, plant trees where maybe the commercial aspect of, how much it is they would be able to get and how fast is something that they have to weigh.
Yeah, so thank you very much. When I talked of high potential areas, I meant areas that are able to receive high or between moderate to high rainfalls, which is majorly the agroecological zone 2, 3, up to 4. So majorly the areas with high rainfall. But I was also giving the examples of areas that are marginally drier.
Yeah.
And we said now for those areas...
Sorry to interrupt again.
Yes.
I think sometimes we assume that we know which are these area 2, 3, 4. I can guess. I can guess it's the Rift Valley, the Highlands, Central, Eastern, parts of Eastern, but I cannot tell you for sure that I know area 2, 3, 4. Might as well be area 2, 7,
area 2, something.
That's right, yeah. But yes.
Thank you very much. And I think, sorry for that assumption that you are aware of. I meant the major food producing counties. We are having the Rift Valley, the Centrals, Western Kenya that have very good rainfall and very good soils. So those are the areas now we are proposing that apart from the traditional tea, coffee, we are now saying also consider avocado, consider cocoa, as part of the premium crops you can be able to grow and never go wrong. Because we did an analytics between maize, potatoes, tea, coffee, and cocoa. And the studies show that cocoa has higher potential than all of that. Of course, we are not saying that we would want all of a sudden to replace the already traditional crops, but it could be part of what you need to introduce in your farm through the normal farm designs that farmers know better. Then, of course, if you may allow me, I go now to the lower, the arid and semi-arid areas. We note that in this country, we consume, especially our Muslim brothers, consume dates as part of their religious, nutritional aspects. And you would be shocked that majorly all those are imports, either from Egypt all the way to Israel. And we mapped and realized that there are certain counties that have very high potential. Talk of Garissa all the way to Tana River, and the marginally and the marginal counties in terms of the rainfall availability. So we are now putting that as a flagship species for mass production and adoption by those communities. Secondly, also is a species called saddlewood, which is a very important tree that is also able to do well in those marginal counties. So for purposes of balance, those are, and of course you would also realize that we're importing a lot of oil or palm oil. So we would also be looking at the promotion of palm oil. So that we don't also mix ourselves. We are saying first we dedicate and ensure that cocoa takes off, but the others are also lined up for purposes of scaling up. But of course, to still really support the marginal counties, there are almost 3 or 4 regulations that are undergoing development. One of them is on gum and resins. Gums are products that are naturally available in trees, especially in those regions, that has huge economic potential, but its trade has not been well coordinated and organized. So the regulation is now to be able to support real commercialization and value for investment in those areas. Next other one, of course, I know is the issue of charcoal, which is a topical subject, is a topical product, but the reality is that it is an economic engine for those counties. And the last studies that was done has actually documented the potential. If it's well done and well coordinated, it's able to really transform those rural livelihoods. So those are part of the support legislations that we are rearing to ensure that they are publicly available to support the marginal counties as we push the high potential ones to even greater heights.
I mean, we can see the economic value here, to be quite honest, and dates, sandalwood, gums, raisin, all of that, and then the cacao and avocado, very clear from a forestry perspective. I'll go back a little bit. What would be the economic incentive for having a state lodge in Imenti forest?
Yeah, I think...
this one is very clear. Dates, raisins, cacao, avocado, whams. Yeah, state lodge, not so much. Golf course.
Yeah, I think it is a subject that is still ongoing. I wouldn't want to go into a lot of details around it. So allow us to stick to this other part of the agenda.
Okay. Tarus is like, you'll not catch me on this one.
Nothing.
There's none. You know.
Okay, so let's speak to you as a conservator of forest, George.
Yes,
all right?
yes.
And you really sound completely convinced that if we all looked at, as I'm farming, I can put trees, or I can look at what would give me more commercial value here. I can go into avocado farming, into cocoa farming, into palm farming, into whatever. You know, you can see the value that would bring to our tree cover and to our environment and ecosystem. You can see the value of that. Do you get concerned if people now stopped doing that? If people started cutting down their avocado farm trees, would you be concerned?
Definitely. I would
you get concerned if people do not take up this, growing of dates in the arid and semi-arid areas, where you can clearly see this would help the environment, it would help the farmer. There would be value.
Definitely, I would be concerned.
Okay.
As a policy maker, yes, I would be concerned.
Would you get concerned If you were driving around Ngong Forest and you found that they have cut down some trees on 5 acres and apparently they want to put up a hotel,
I would have to find out why that is being done. Because, like I said, forestry is also managed from a wider context. And apart from economics, which is one of the reasons why we are managing our forest resources, there is also recreational. There are also environmental benefits that are meant to be derived out of that. So that's how we manage our forest. And that's why in our forests, you would also realize there are belts that are dedicated for industrial purposes.
You're doing two things here, George.
There is also,
on the one hand,
yes,
if a community has established a forest and they suddenly decide, you know what, these trees are not making sense for us, let's put more houses, you'd be concerned that they're starting to cut trees. First reaction is concern. But first reaction in a public forest is establish why.
Let's figure out why.
Yeah.
No, I didn't say that. Let's
Would
figure
you
out
be
why.
concerned?
Because by the time that facility is coming up in a public forest, it must have been able to meet all the thresholds of its existence there. And
And that's why I'm saying that, because it will start from your office. As a secretary for forestry, it will come to your office before it even comes to us as a public. It will come to your office. That, you know what, Secretary, there's this idea to do this and the other, and that would mean that we give up some 5 acres, 10 acres, 15 acres of our forests, right? Where if that proposal is brought to you, is your first reaction, okay, explain to me why, or your first reaction, instinctively, as a forester, be like, why cut the trees? Are you telling me there's nowhere else we could do this? Is that not your... Or am I assuming that this is who you are?
Of course, from where I'm seated as a forester, my desire and passion is to see more trees and to see more forest standing. But I wouldn't again be opaque to the fact that we need to balance that versus the wider trajectory Kenya wants to take. Because in reality, we are saying we want to be in the first world. We want to go to Singapore. And going to Singapore requires that we have certain elements, right? And looking at even the next phase of the planning that is supposed to take us to 2060, environment is the foundation for the others to thrive. Of course, that concern would, of course, be the first thing I would have. And by the time that is approved, of course, it must have gone through the rigors and many other analytics to see that.
So you'll raise the threshold. For you, you'll be, as the Secretary for Forestry, I'm raising the threshold. You must completely justify to me why we are cutting trees to put up this infrastructure, right?
Yes.
Now imagine that infrastructure is a golf course.
If it has been able to meet, yes.
What
all
would
the
it need to meet
I was about to be
to
like,
convince?
Hi.
What do I need to do to convince you that I need to cut 20 acres
Also,
of
hi Siri.
forest cover
Hi
to
Siri.
put up?
How many state lodges does Singapore have?
What's that state lodge kwanza? Golf course.
How many golf courses does
as far as I'm aware, and it's not wrong to have a proposal. It's never been wrong to have a proposal. It's never been wrong to have an idea. Of course, where sometimes it's good to discuss facts. Is there a golf course in the forest as we speak now?
No.
So?
Is there
That's why I'm saying there could be proposals. But by the time it's being established, it must really convince any other person that it is really desired.
As a Secretary for Forestry,
yes, that is really
what
desired.
do I need to do to convince you?
Number one, it is very clear as per the existing Forest Conservation and Management Act what facilities qualify. It must be able to serve the public and many others around that. Secondly, also, there are critical infrastructure that needs to be in existence in forest. But again, the way I said, the role of forestry, apart from being a purely conservation agenda, has also an economic agenda in it. These resources also can be used to turn around our economy.
Which goes back to my earlier question. What would be the economic incentive of having a state lodge or a golf course? Let's even leave the golf course. And actually, let's not, because you are the Secretary of Forests. So to the best of your knowledge, is there a proposal to have a golf course in Imenti Forest, one? And then two, what would be the economic benefit of these things to the people of Imenti and to the nation?
Of course, I think we must be able to dissect how forestry is managed in Kenya. The administration, the day-to-day administration of forests in Kenya for purposes of public, as per the law, is Kenya Forest Service. Secondly, through the amendment of the Forest Conservation and Management Act, we've been also able to create an office of Director Forest Regulation or Directorate of Forest Regulations. And this Directorate of Forest Regulation would, and that would be within the ministry, be able to answer all these questions. And number one, set standards.
I won't let that one go. Let me tell you why. If you know that there's public participation if you can answer whether KFS conducted public participation about a state lodge and an airstrip, then if there's rumors milling around that there's also a golf course, you know that it's either part or not. It can't now go to the directorate.
But you see, now you know sometimes in government we don't deal with rumors.
Let me bring in the, George, the public participation that was held about 2 weeks ago in regard to this was not, it didn't paint a very good picture because of the events that took place. There was someone that works within the conservation space that had collected signatures and was going to present them, and goons ended up in that situation. And, that's a piece that is available in terms of how it ran in the media. But you can clearly see the community is opposed to it. And the curiosity that we have sitting on this side is whether there's any objection that is coming in from KFS or from the ministries in terms of opposing this. And not saying that, it's been cleared from our quarters and therefore the only thing we're waiting for right now is public participation. There has to be an element of people who sit within your structures that look at this and say, it does not benefit the community and it's not what is needed.
Thank you very much. Like you said, of course, I also saw those funny clips and funny situations in the media. And the fortunate part is that issue now is in courts. The courts should be able now to dissect all the facts and be able to guide us on what we need to do. We expect the court would be able to issue its decision on July 30th, which is next week. So I would say that we defer that issue up to when the courts would have directed, because they are able to look at the merits and the demerits of every other thing.
30th July.
This is on the matter of the forest.
Okay. Well, these fixers who've checked in, just weighing their opinion on the same. We just read like 2 or 3 comments. We have Freedom Babu, who's saying the effects of cutting down trees in Kunga are already felt when the trees were cleared. For showground Nari area used to get a lot of rain today. The crops are drying due to lack of rain. Use Metongo, that's in Meru, yeah? Then we have Njanga Njogu, who says, how do we trust our forest? With someone who said, rain doesn't come from trees. We've seen invasion in Ngong, Karura, and now Imenti. We also have Njanga Njogu, who said, in matters of afforestation, I feel sorry for this regime. Same WhatsApp group with Trump agenda. High appetite in deforestation, but when they hear carbon credits and COP conferences, they are conservatives. And so many more comments that are coming in regard to this conversation.
I think as we look at the balancing of these issues, there's a whole issue of creating awareness, and sensitizing people, because one does not negate the other. I think it's very clear that forestry in all our homes and would benefit all of us as environmentally and privately, commercially. So embracing agroforestry is something that, it's a gospel that everyone can preach. We have our environment desk here that does that all the time with very many shows, Earthwise Mutani and Earthwise and others. And so it's a good thing to actually see and roll out. We will be checking in with you as you start rolling out this policy on how far you're going to engage communities, how far you're going to actually sell the idea to the communities and the support that you need to give them. You can't just go and tell people, you know what, guys, you can plant dates. They're very good. And dates are very good for no, you have to go further and support them in actually establishing that and linking them out with markets. But George, we'll invite you again. George Tarus is the Secretary of Forestry. He's been our guest talking about agroforestry and the need for us just to look at forests as a means of our own livelihood. In the next hour, we talk about lawyers. They are not going to court today. Why? Their president will be with us shortly. Good morning.